We've covered just about every type of extra deck evolution in the game, and how these new forms of monsters manage to thrive in the metagame while also carrying the ideas, themes, and spirits of their older forms into a more competitive setting. With the only one we've yet to cover being the Link evolutions, the summoning mechanic which has the most busted evolutions in the game. So in this video, we're going to go over the 10 most interesting and powerful Link evolutions, their place in the meta, and how they differ from their original form. Appearing as a circuit that leads the future at number 10 is Linkuriboh. The Link evolution, one of the game's most iconic and important mascots, Kuriboh, who actually gets a new retrain or counterpart with every new Yu-Gi-Oh generation. But out of all of them, Linkuriboh is by far the strongest. In terms of effects, the original Kuriboh is defensive and allows you to discard it from your hand during damage calculation after an opponent's monster has declared an attack to make it so you take no battle damage. Linkuriboh adopts its defensive capabilities for a more modern age, with its first effect where you can activate it whenever an opponent's monster declares an attack by attributing Linkuriboh for cost, which lets you change the attacking monster's attack to 0. But just because you attribute it doesn't mean Linkuriboh's gone forever, because if Linkuriboh is in your graveyard, you can activate its bonus effect at quick effect speed to tribute a level 1 monster to summon it back to the field. But in order to bring out Linkuriboh from the extra deck in the first place, you need to link summon it by using any level 1 monster. Now, in the original Duel Monsters anime, Kuriboh was often mocked as the weakest monster in the game due to its incredible low stat line, but it was still played by Yugi due to the potential he saw in the card, and because of Kuriboh's loyalty as a companion. And he was rewarded for his trust, as Kuriboh's effects came up numerous times throughout the series in order to save his life points in really intense moments, thus giving him one more turn to turn the duel around. Likewise, Linkuriboh, despite being introduced to the game over a decade later, was used in a similar capacity in the Vrains anime, where Linkuriboh was introduced as a loyal friend to AI and was vitally important to Yusuke's duels to save him from deadly attacks, which is precisely how Linkuriboh's first effect is used in the actual game itself, as a neat battle trick that's capable of giving you just one more turn if your opponent doesn't respect it, which actually makes it a really cool way of translating the original Kuriboh's one-time save to a more modern game. But the connection between those two Kuribohs goes even deeper than you might think. You see, in the Duel Monsters anime, Kuriboh wasn't just as effective as a hand trap, it was also an integral part of Yugi's deck due to its hidden capabilities, and was an integral tool for defeating Maximilian Pegasus at the end of the Duelist Kingdom arc. This was all due to the spell card, Multiply, which allowed Kuriboh to spawn infinite versions of itself and create an unbreakable defensive wall that even the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and the Thousand Eyes Restrict couldn't break through. These Kuriboh clones could then detonate on impact with the opponent's monster to weaken or destroy them, and Linkuriboh actually does a really good job referencing both of these abilities with its two effects. Its first effect causes Linkuriboh to detonate itself whenever an opponent's monster tries to make contact with you, triggering itself for cost, weakening them until the end of the turn. And while Linkuriboh won't spawn copies of itself, it is capable of multiplying infinitely with its second effect, because you can keep bringing back Linkuriboh each turn so long as you have level 1 monsters to tribute. These two effects combine to create a more modern version of the infinite Kuriboh defense, allowing Linkuriboh to save your life points a number of different times in a duel, just like how Kuriboh was capable of infinitely defending Yugi's life points. Unfortunately though, for as cool these effects are for keeping the spirit of Kuriboh alive, they're not really important to Linkuriboh's relevance in the Yu-Gi-Oh meta. The real reason Linkuriboh saw a ton of competitive play isn't because of its effects. It's because of its summoning condition, which lets you immediately put a level 1 monster into the graveyard while putting a free body on the board. This was important for a number of different strategies, such as dinosaurs. Linkuriboh was needed in order to be used as a non-dinosaur monster to fulfill the conditions of Double Evolution Pill, and in Altergeist for being able to put Mulisix in the graveyard to trigger her effect. But the time where Linkuriboh reached meta dominance was in Spiral format, where it could be used to easily put Spiral Quick Fix in the graveyard in order to use its graveyard effect to summon itself out again and abuse its on-summon effect, while also putting a free body on board. Now, while this use in the competitive metagame doesn't really take into account Linkuriboh's defensive capabilities, it actually works out to still reference some of the ways the original Kuriboh was used in Duel Monsters. You see, Kuriboh wasn't just used for its abilities in the anime, it was also one of Yugi's most important enablers, and was often tributed or sacrificed for the summon of other more powerful monsters, such as in the duel against the mind-controlled Joey Wheeler, where Kuriboh was used by Yugi to summon out Joey's Red Eyes Black Dragon, and was even an important part of the first ritual summon of Blacklisted Soldier against My Valentine in both the anime and manga, where BLS was summoned out by tributing Kuriboh in both versions, a fact referenced in Super Soldier Ritual where you can see it in its card artwork. Incidentally, Linkuriboh happens to be used in a similar way in the competitive metagame, enabling other combo extenders while also being material important enough for the summons of other monsters, which in a roundabout way makes it so that Linkuriboh references every way Kuriboh was used in the anime. While some Kuriboh variants are definitely better than others, it's really cute that, despite the game being around for over 2 decades, Kuriboh has always managed to return in some way, shape, or form, as a loyal companion not just to the characters in the anime and manga, but to us as players. And Linkuriboh manages to be the best evolution of Kuriboh we've ever received, both for flavor and competitive use. Being able to detonate and multiply like its original form, while also being an important tool for combo decks, enables some of their most powerful plays. Which honestly isn't bad for an evolution based on the card that so many dismissed as the weakest monster in the game. Just be hopeful that it's more loyal to you than it is to AI. Riding in on Currents of Lightning at number 9 is PSY-Framelord Lambda, the archetypal link monster for the PSY-Frame archetype, who also just so happens to be an evolution of PSY-Frame Multithreader, the only known wielder of the PSY-Frame gears, alongside PSY-Frame Driver. The original Multithreader was designed as a way to bring out your PSY-Framelords without necessarily having to rely on Driver, because in the hand and graveyard, Multithreader's name is treated as PSY-Frame Driver, allowing you to use the effects of your gears to summon out Multithreader so that you can then synchro summon it into a lord. The same goal is also accomplished with Multithreader's third effect, which allows you to special summon her to the field from your graveyard if a PSY-Frame tuner is special summoned to the field. And it's even easier to put in the graveyard as well, since she has an in-hand effect where if a PSY-Frame card or cards would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can discard her instead. Meanwhile, Lambda's effects are actually quite different from her original counterpart. Her first effect is a simple continuous effect that allows you to activate the effects of your PSY-Frame hand traps even while you control a face-up monster. And if a psychic monster you control happens to be banished face-up while you control Lambda, you can use her trigger effect to add a PSY-Frame card from your deck to your hand during the end phase. Now, while both of these effects are quite different from one another, they both manage to support the use of the PSY-Frames, while also acting as an alternative to the original wielder of the gears by using them in their own unique ways. Multithreader can act like Driver in the hand and graveyard, showcasing how she, just like Driver, is capable of wielding the gears. But she differentiates herself from him by playing a more active role in the strategy, since she gives the deck protection and can act as an extender while in the graveyard. This means that you can summon out PSY-Framelords without necessarily having to rely on the effects of the gears, giving the deck a more active way of reaching its boss monsters. This is in stark contrast to Driver, who takes a more passive role in the deck as a monster who is wholly reliant on the gears for a summon. A similar contrast is upheld as Driver and Multithreader become lords themselves, with them both using their powers in their own unique ways to support their gears. As both Zeta and Omega, Driver does this by banishing himself, letting him escape the S-Force while also clearing away your own field so that you don't control any monsters. This lets you fulfill the activation requirements of the gears so that you can always use them as hand traps, while also letting you keep a strong boss monster in rotation to apply pressure on your opponent. Meanwhile, Lambda supports the gears by altering their activation conditions even while you control a monster, letting the deck take a more active role by letting you commit other monsters to the field. And it's this particular Master of the Gears that led Lambda to seeing so much competitive play in just about any strategy was willing to play PSY-Frame Gear Gamma. Gamma had always been a busted hand trap, and one that was either capable of shutting down an opponent's turn or making their hand traps meaningless, and was especially crazy if you managed to activate Gamma on your own turn, as it provided you with 2 free buys you could use for a Synchrowader or Link Summon, which made it an incredibly generic staple that's seen years of competitive play in hundreds of different decks. But one of the big downsides to Gamma was that as soon as you committed a monster to your field, you couldn't use it anymore. Lambda fixes this problem entirely with her first effect, letting you commit monsters to the field while keeping Gamma alive in your hand. This increases Gamma's strength as a proactive tool, as you can make Lambda early in your combo to protect your plays, while also increasing the strength of your end board by giving you an extra interruption in the form of Gamma in your hand. And because Lambda's materials were so generic, just about any strategy could use her to this advantage. Now, with the recent limitation of Gamma, Lambda is likely to see a lot less competitive play. But for the time when Gamma was at 3, she was an absolute star player in extra decks that turned the PSY-Frame gears from amazing to insane, showing off Multithreader's strength as a wielder of these weapons and her role as a more active and energetic PSY-Frame. Hiding in the shadows at number 8 is Dharc, the Dark Charmer Gloomy, the Dharc representative of the Charmer Link monsters, who are all evolutions of the familiar Possessed counterparts, who are in turn evolutions of the original Charmer monsters. These monsters are a series of flip monsters that, when flipped face up, you can take control of an opponent's monster or their associated attribute, allowing them to literally charm your opponent's monsters and have them fight alongside you as you control that charmer. The familiar Possessed monsters are the stronger versions of these charmers after having gained a greater mastery over their attribute in familiar, and have allowed their familiar to possess them to grant them strength. This is reflected in their summon conditions and effects, allowing you to summon them by sending their associated charmer and a monster of the attribute to the graveyard, so that you can summon them out from the hand or deck. And when they're summoned this way, their greater strength shines, as they can now inflict piercing battle damage when attacking defense position monsters. Other than Dharc and Lina, who instead get to search out monsters from their deck to the hand, Lina can add any spellcaster monster with 1500 defense, and Dharc can only search out level 3 or 4 light spellcasters. These monsters then evolve into the Link Charmers after taking up a second familiar. The Link Charmers are always treated as familiar possessed cards, and can be summoned out using any 2 monsters as long as one of those monsters is a monster of their associated attribute. These monsters all have the same 2 effects. Their first effect allows them to target a monster in your opponent's graveyard as their associated attribute, and special summon to a zone that they point to. And if the Link Summon Charmers are destroyed by opponent's card while you control them, you get to add any monster of their attribute from your deck to your hand, as long as that monster has 1500 or less defense. These effects are actually really cute upgrades of the original Charmers and do an amazing job of bringing their flavor to modern strategies. The Link Charmers retain the ability to charm an opponent's monster of their same attribute, but instead of stealing a monster from the field, you steal from their graveyard instead. This has a whole host of applications depending on the format and the charmer you're using. In formats where Cash Tier or the Ashija Shufflers are popular, it's fairly likely you'll see the Asuna summon to steal an opponent's Fenrir or Mudora. And when DPE or Spright or the Tier 0 Tearlaments are running around, Dharc is a really common inclusion to provide you with extra extension or just steal an opponent's boss monster. But that's not where the utility of the Charmers ends, because their second effect is just as strong as their first effect, allowing some strategies to search pretty much their entire deck if the charmer of their attribute is destroyed by opponent's card. In tier formats, Dharc is often used by both Spright and Tier, who are more than willing to crash them so they can search out Blue or Havnus, while if Lina is destroyed you get to add an Effect Veiler or Gamma to hand, and if Asua is destroyed while you're on Naturia, you get to add a free Mole Cricket to your hand. Essentially, these second effects have just as much utility as their first effects, and can be winningly strong if they have a good search target waiting in the wings, no matter the attribute. And it's actually a really nice reference to Lina and Dharc's search effects as familiar possessed monsters. But it's both of these effects combined that showcase just how strong the Charmers have become as a group. With each one now having gained such a mastery of their attribute, they're capable of charming and searching monsters at the same time, all while possessing multiple familiars. And this newfound strategy is translated excellently into the TCG, where the Charmer Link monsters have reached staple status and a ton of different strategies for their general utility. Contained at the number 7 spot is Spright Sprind, who is actually a combination of the Spright monsters after having been defeated and imprisoned within Kit Spriggan's armor, which is actually how this monster got the name Sprind, since Kit's armor was also formed from pieces of the original Sprind, the Iron Dash Dragon. Spright Sprind has 3 effects. Its first prevents it from being used as Link materials to turn its Link summoned, just like Elf. Its third effect calls back to its Spriggan's origins, allowing to detach material from an Xyz's multi-control in order to act as removal. But instead of destroying like the Spriggans usually do, Spright Sprind instead lets you return a monster to the hand. Meanwhile, Sprind's second effect is a reference to its Spright Prisoners, and allows you to send a level 2 monster from your deck to the graveyard whenever Sprind is Link summoned. This is a really funny evolution of the Sprites, because while this effect doesn't relate to or evolve from the effects of the Spright monsters, it instead showcases their defeat at the hands of Regulus, Sargass, and Kit, after having been contained within Kit's old armor. Which is an idea that's translated really well into the actual game, because whenever Sprind is brought out, you have the opportunity to send a Spright from your deck to your graveyard to show off their literal defeat and how foolish they were to challenge our heroes. However, you'd rarely actually send a Spright with Sprind, and even though it's a monster that's supposed to signify the defeat of the archetype, Spright and other decks that use level 2s use Sprind to their advantage in order to easily access a ton of powerful graveyard effects. Tearlaments often use Sprind to ensure they always have way to foolish Tearlaments merely to use her Fusion Summon effect, while pure Spright would usually send Nimble Angler to the graveyard so they can get out 2 Nimble Beavers from the deck, and funnily enough, even Tri-Brigade decks take advantage of Sprind in order to send Tri-Brigade Kit, Sprind's original creator, from the deck to the grave. Both Sprind's Bounce and Foolish have a ton of utility between them that has allowed for it to be a staple extra deck piece in Spright and in a ton of other strategies, but there's no doubt that its strongest effect is its Foolish, which allows you to easily access and use any level 2 in the game with a good graveyard effect, leading you to victory. Which is quite ironic given that Sprind was supposed to represent the initial defeat of the Aigyros Menace. And flying into number 6 is Sky Striker Ace Kagari, the flaming evolution of Sky Striker Ace Ray, who actually has a number of different evolutions with different attributes so that you can adapt to any given situation using her fabled power of the Sky Striker. This is actually reflected in her on-field effect because, at quick effect speed, you can tribute Ray to special summon out a Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. And it just so happens that every ace that you can summon with its effect happens to be an evolution of Ray. And if any Sky Striker Ace monster is destroyed by battle or removed from the field by opponent's card effect, you can use Ray's graveyard effect to special summon herself back out from the graveyard in order to go into a new form and deal with your opponent's latest threats. Kagari is one of these forms, with her effect being quite different from Ray due to the suit being more specialized as an offensive force, which is why she gains an extra 100 attack for each spell card you have in your graveyard. And when she's special summoned, you get to target a Sky Striker spell card in your graveyard to add it to your hand. The reason why Kagari's effect is like this is due to the specific role that she fulfills in Ray's arsenal. Kagari is supposed to be used as a way to fire back against an opponent that represents insurmountable odds, which is why Kagari gives Ray a much needed power up, allowing you to beat over even the biggest of beatsticks if you happen to have enough spell cards in your graveyard. All the while, she's also able to act as a recovery tool to add back your important Sky Striker spells so that you can go all out on one last maneuver. This is precisely how Kagari is portrayed in the Sky Striker manga, where this suit was first introduced when Ray had been beaten back by Rose, who managed to land a cut on her rival. This forced Ray to make a tactical retreat so she could relaunch the Engage system to bring out her first true evolution, Kagari, who was more than capable of defeating Rose after going all out on an Afterburners maneuver, and thereafter Kagari was used as Rei's main offensive tool. Meanwhile, Kagari's use in the competitive metagame actually conveys this idea really well, since her role as a recovery tool is really important for letting you add Engage from your graveyard to your hand after it's been sent to your graveyard, either because you activated already or via the effect of Hayate. This gives Sky Striker easy and consistent access to its strongest playmaker, which can be used multiple times over a duel or even a turn due to Kagari's recovery effect, allowing for Rei and her arsenal to take on decks, strategies, and boss monsters that would otherwise be out of her league. Although in this case, Kagari is less used as an all-out attack like in the manga, and more like a way to gradually whittle down an opponent's resources while letting you accumulate your own alongside Rei's other forms, showcasing her mastery of the Sky Striker system as a whole. As a result of always being able to take on stronger decks, Sky Striker has managed to always see a decent amount of competitive play, and is always close to rogue playability if not already a strong meta contender. And a huge part of this is thanks to Kagari Rei's first power-up and the Sky Striker ace that gives the deck a ton of resilience despite its age. Alright, and that's it for part 1 of this video. This video was just a tad too long for one video, so we just split it into 2 parts.